What's up YouTube? Dr. McIntosh here with Health and Performance Center. This is Impingement Part 3 where we talk about biomechanics of the shoulder. This is Shoulder Impingement Part 3. Again, I am Dr. McIntosh with Health and Performance Center. So, what are our objectives for this video? Number one, we want to discuss biomechanics of the shoulder. We want to understand the role of the rotator cuff in shoulder movement, and we're going to kind of set the stage for how we might set up a rehab process for somebody with shoulder problems. So number one, you can't talk about the shoulder without talking about the scapula. So here's a great illustration I found online. This basically looks at all the movements of the scapula. So from left to right, we've got elevation and depression. That's basically moving up, shrugging your shoulders up and down. We've got protraction and retraction here, basically moving your shoulders around again. We've got upward and downward rotation. Basically thinking about it, when your arm moves overhead, the scapula has to upwardly rotate versus downwardly rotate. Next, we've got a zoomed in picture of the shoulder. This is a front view of the shoulder here. So before you get confused, look where there's a red line that's pointing upward that says deltoid. That is the shoulder muscle. So basically the shoulder is involved with, the deltoid is involved with lifting the arm. When you lift the arm, now you can look right in the center where it says roll and slide. So the shoulder socket looks kind of like this. This hand being the humerus. When you lift your arm up, it rolls in the socket. Can everybody kind of see that? So what happens is if it were to purely just roll, it would pinch the contents above the shoulder, that being the supraspinatus muscle of the rotator cuff, and everything under the acromion process, right? Remember back from part 1 and part 2 as far as what happens with true impingement. But the shoulder has another cool mechanism to where when it rolls, it slides down to keep that shoulder centrated in the joint. Now here's another great image showing the roll. So if you look at the image on the right, where when you lift the arm up out to the side, that's abduction of the shoulder, it rolls superiorly towards up. And it pinches the things under the acromion process there, one of those being the subacromial bursa. It's like a fluid sac, and the rotator cuff tendon itself. Now, the role of that, one of the muscles of the rotator cuff, the supraspinatus, it pulls the shoulder down into the socket. So it contributes to that slide mechanism, right? If there was purely just rolling, whenever you lift your arm, well, it's just going to pinch something and impinge on it, and it might cause pain. However, when you lift the arm, it rolls, and the supraspinatus muscle of the rotator cuff slides it back down into the shoulder joint itself. So the supraspinatus, which is most commonly injured muscle of the rotator cuff, has a huge role in centering the humerus or the arm bone in the shoulder socket. Now here's another image of simply the supraspinatus pulling the shoulder bone, the arm bone into the shoulder socket itself when you lift the arm. This is a great image. This is what's supposed to happen. There's plenty of space for all the things under the acromion process. Next, whenever you're thinking about starting a rehab process or rehab program for a certain area of the body, I like to think about two sort of principles. One of those being movement selection, right? What stance are you going to be in? What plane of motion are you going to be moving in? The image on the top right of the screen, it shows sagittal plane, horizontal plane, frontal plane. Movements kind of happen in one of the three planes. if you're being very specific and isolating something. Otherwise, they can happen in multiple. But you should understand what plane of motion you're moving in when you're doing a rehab process. Another thing for movement selection would be an open chain versus a closed chain exercise. We'll talk more about that in the next video. But then the other rehab principle I like to think about is movement quantity, collectively called load management. But things like the load being the intensity of your 1 rep max. So are we lifting at 90% of your 1 rep max, or are we lifting at 20%? As you can see, the load is very different between those two. The velocity, which is the speed at which the lift is carried out, and then the duration, right, is the set that you are partaking in. Does it take 3 minutes to complete, or is this does it take 30 seconds to complete? So these are things I like to think about when contemplating starting rehab for a specific area. So in summary, to start a rehab program, you really need to understand the biomechanics of the joint or muscle that you intend on working. It's very important because when you have to isolate specific movements, specific actions of muscles, you need to understand what they do and why they do it. Number two, it's very easy to, let's say, give somebody rehab built for a professional level athlete when they're just a soccer mom or they're just an average guy with a dad bod. Well, you need to be able to assess someone's current level of fitness and their injury level to then set the stage to progress them appropriately through whatever rehab process they're going to go through. Now in the next video, we're going to talk a little bit more about specifics of how to rehab the shoulder. So stay tuned for more videos. This was Impingement Part 3. You should understand pretty well the biomechanics of the shoulder. Thanks for watching.